reported that the nerve gas missiles were fired from a Syrian missile base in a mountain range west of Damascus. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov blasted the West for plotting another war without providing the world with any concrete evidence of weapons of mass destruction. He said it didn't make sense for Syria to invite UN inspectors into the country and then launch a nerve gas attack at the same time. General Martin Dempsey convened an emergency meeting in Amman, Jordan on Sunday for a 3-day meeting of military commanders from 10 nations. Western military commanders are drawing up a list of Syrian targets to bomb, possibly starting this week. And a top Syrian government official said that if the West attacks his country, the Middle East will go up in flames. Well, let's check in with Trends researcher Gerald Celente to get his assessment of the lunatics now in charge of the insane asylum. By far, Gerald Celente is recognized worldwide as the foremost expert on trends. He is the founder and director of the Trends Research Institute and the publisher of the TrendsJournal, the magazine that publishes history before it happens. And by the way, the TrendsJournal has been completely overhauled with an all-new format and graphic design. I've got a copy of it. It looks great. The website is TrendsResearch.com. Well, Gerald, if there isn't an outbreak of sanity this week, it looks like the asylum inmates are going to start another war.
You mean the psychopaths in chief? And you're right, and they are. And this all sounds quite familiar. I get a kick, by the way, Rick, out of these liberals out there that all of a sudden have lockjaw for Obama almost repeating a second act of the George W. Bush play of Osama bin Laden has weapons of mass destruction and rolling out that Colin Powell to the UN, showing us the fake proof. And the same thing is going on now, because when you read the headlines, there's no proof. It's what the United States suspects. And they destroy. And according to William Hague, they destroyed the evidence, so we can't show it to you anyhow. You just got to take their word. Exactly. And why shouldn't we take their word? Because, again, you know, the Osama bin Laden, Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. Let's not forget the Gulf of Tonkin incident that never happened that got us into the Vietnam War. They killed 55,000 of our men and destroyed a nation, killed, I think, 3 million of them. And what did we kill 1 million in Iraq? The numbers show. And an estimated $1 trillion spent. And this is brilliant. I mean, in the military, just one victory after another. Oh, I mentioned Vietnam. That was a huge success. Of course, then there was Afghanistan, the longest war in American history that continues to go on. Victories right around the corner. Why, I heard General Petraeus, when he was leading the charge, say they were making impressive progress. Quote, oh, and then Iraq, a beauty. Oh, by the way, 3,000 people killed in Iraq just in the past few months with, quote, insurgents causing disarray. So, Libya. I forgot about Libya. How could I forget about Libya? The Nobel Peace Prize winner, Obama. That's right, the humanitarian mission that destroyed the nation. They're batting 0 for 4. What are they going to go for, another one now?
Well, you forgot Egypt. They got that country in a revolution.
Egypt. How could I forget Egypt? You're right. And I remember President Obama, by the way, saying that Egypt was now going into democracy when Mubarak fell, and that they would never return to a dictatorial power. Oh, by the way, that wasn't a military coup. You know that. It only looks like these guys are dressed like military guys, and the military is the guy that overthrew Morsi. Like him, hate him, not the issue. Democratically elected. They had an election. But it's not a military coup.
But those people that were overthrown just happened to be the Muslim Brotherhood, which were put into power by the U.S. and the West.
That's what they say. And again, it's not a military coup. So anybody that thinks it was a military coup only because this guy, El-Sisi, is dressed like a general, looks like a general, has been a general, and he's leading the charge over there, it's not a military coup, because if it was, then we, the taxpayer, would not be obligated to give, or not obligated, they could not steal our $1.5 billion and give it to the Egyptian military as they're doing.
Gerald, we're watching the latest stage of a plan that was launched in September of 2001. And clearly, there was a plan in place to remake the Middle East. And there's been one country after another attacked, and the whole Middle East is in turmoil. And you mentioned the death tolls of civilians in all these countries. Christianity is being eliminated in the Middle East. And I don't hear anybody crying and weeping for the destruction of the churches and the burning down of Christian-owned homes and the people who've been decapitated and butchered in all this chaos. And this is the byproduct of the Western foreign policy.
It's as it would have it, in today's Trends in the News, that is part of the subscription to the TrendsJournal. Each evening we do the Trends in the News, real news, not the junk you get on the network news. That's exactly what I talked about. I have Christian friends that are Syrian that have been forced to leave. And these are doctors. These are educated people. They've been forced to leave. They're living in Canada now, had to leave everything behind. And I said to myself, I said to the audience, actually, I said, suppose there were Syrian Jews that were being persecuted like this. You think we'd hear a lot about it on the news media? But Christians don't count. Nah, that's okay. As you said, destroy their churches, throw them out. They're only Christians. So I have been making the point, continue to make the point. And as I also mentioned, the hypocrisy. And by the way, earlier I said the liberals would be screaming bloody murder if Bush was doing what Obama's doing. Whether it's the Quran, the Bible, or Jesus, Muhammad, or Buddha, there is no salvation for the hypocrite. And hypocrisy rules at the moment.
Gerald, do you think this planned attack on Syria is a diversion from the ongoing implosion of the debt-ridden American and European socialist government system?
Well, I must disagree. I don't believe it's
just
socialist.
A question. Okay.
No, it's just to address that issue.
Mm-hmm.
4 words make it something else. Too big to fail. It's no longer capitalism, but saving too big to fail. That's the merger of state and corporate powers.
Mm-hmm. So you got
That's
fascism.
called fascism.
That's right.
So fascism. Do I think that capitalism has been destroyed and that fascism has taken over? And just to make the point, by the way, now this headline I'm going to read you is not from the World Socialist Organization's newspaper. It's from CNBC. The 5% recovery, why most are still in recession. How strong the economic recovery has been since the Great Recession ended in 2009 probably depends on viewpoint. For those in the top 5% of wealth, the recovery has been pretty good. As for the other 95%, well, maybe not so much. Remember, this is coming from CNBC. No longer, Rick, can you deny the facts. It's a takeover. So, yes, I agree that they're looking to divert our attention. You go look at the news this week. Look what's going on with Italian bonds. The Italian market's down about 2.5%, just opening up the week. There's economic turmoil in all the emerging markets, in Indonesia, in Brazil. All the emerging markets are down over 11% for the year. Their currencies are all crashing. Brazil just announced a $60 billion plan to prop up their real because all of this recovery was a fake recovery because of all of the trillions of dollars of hot money that flowed out of the United States, all that cheap money, and into these other economies to make it seem like there was a recovery. So, yes, I believe that part of this diversion is, and I've been writing about this. When the crash happened in the panic of '08, I said there is no recovery. It's a cover-up, and when all else fails, they take you to war.
Gerald, there's the possibility of a war, and we're talking about this week. I mean, this is no longer speculation that that we're going to attack Syria sometime in the future. I mean, they're putting dates on it now. They're saying this week, possibly a 2-day bombing campaign. What is the potential for this to get totally out of control by the end of this week or next week, and we find ourselves embroiled in an all-out Middle Eastern war?
Let me just answer this question like this: if the United States, France, and the UK attack Syria, and in response Syria counterattacks, what will they call it? Will they call it revenge? Will they call it a counterattack? Will they call it payback? Will they call it getting even? Or will they call it the golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you? Or will they call it terrorism? So the point being, Rick, is that whatever happens there, you could guarantee that we're going to lose more and more of our rights as there is retaliation and payback. And this has been being set up for a very, very long time. You could go back to our TrendsJournal. I have in front of me, actually, oddly enough, this is the one with Jesus Christ driving the money changers out of the temple, the cover, but the money changers from Citibank, Wells Fargo, J.P. Morgan Chase, and Goldman Sachs, and they're dressed in suits. On page 43 of this journal, we're saying it was classic propaganda 101, and we're writing. Now we're showing headlines. Remember, this is back in 2012, the summer edition, a year ago. Syria chemical weapons. Obama says world is watching. BBC, 23rd July 2012. Israel in tough warning over Syria weapons cache. APF, Agence France Presse, same date. Netanyahu, Hezbollah may get chemical weapons if Syria collapses. And another one. Now Syria raises the specter of chemical weapons. You could see how they were setting it up a year ago, and now I'm going to fast forward. This is from the top trend that I wrote for 2013. Everybody has it. It's out there. My top trend for 2013 was war. And here's some of the official lies. These are headlines again. UK's Hague confirms evidence of Syria chemical arms plans. It's right there. Here's another one. Israel defies allies to move to bolster. Oh, no, that's another one. But one after another about how they were setting us up here. With Syria loads chemical weapons into bombs. Military awaits Assad orders. Again, this is going back to December 2012. So you can see how they kept setting it up, and now with no proof at all, they're saying that they have them. So yes, it's a diversionary tactic.
And several weeks ago, there was a flurry of terrorist alerts in the United States and Europe. Remember, the U.S. said, the news media was reporting that U.S. intelligence agencies were intercepting al-Qaeda conference calls.
I know, yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you, Gerald, with all the news in the world about the NSA listening to everybody's phone calls, why would al-Qaeda have a conference call?
We did a Trends in the News on that. It's a riot. What I had the guys do is to pick up, that audio when you make a conference call. Mm-hmm. And to log in, please put in your PIN number.
Right.
We did a thing on it to do a conference call. I mean, who are they kidding with this stuff? And again, you have the psychopaths in charge. And just to make this really 100% straight, the United States military has not won a major war since World War II. They lost the Korean War. They lost the Vietnam War. I know, if we only let them loose and they didn't kill 3 million people and could have killed maybe 8 million people, we would have won the Vietnam War. You know, they'll always give that excuse. They lost in Afghanistan. They lost in Iraq. They destroyed Libya, gained nothing. And now they're going into Syria. Again, I think you hit it on the head when you said, is this a war that's going to get the people's mind off the declining economy? And to double up on that, all of a sudden, Snowden is out of the news. The IRS scandal? What IRS scandal? I don't remember an IRS scandal. So one thing after another, they're pushing out of the news. The whole NSA atrocity of raping us of our Fourth Amendment rights, that's out of the news virtually. And now it's being focused on Syria. And this other thing, too, by the way, they're saying that Syrians killed an estimated 300 people ostensibly by using chemical weapons. And they said that they would never tolerate that. And I could read you the exact language from the Financial Times. The three governments, meaning the United States, the UK, and France, were considering a series of one-off strikes on Syrian regime's military assets. Now remember, here's the line, to make it clear that much of the international community would not tolerate using chemical weapons in modern warfare, the officials said. All right, now let me get this straight. Not using chemical weapons in modern warfare. Now, didn't Israel destroy much of Palestine with white phosphorus bombs? Didn't the United States use depleted uranium throughout the Iraq War? Oh, and by the way, don't drone strikes count? No, damn it, you could do those things. You just can't use these kind of chemicals. I mean, who's making up this crap? You're dead. How you kill somebody doesn't make any difference. And you want to talk about chemical weapons? What did I forget? Oh, how about the atom bomb that they dropped on Nagasaki and Hiroshima? You know, how about all the carpet bombings? How about the cluster bombs? How about all the mines that are blowing people still to bits all over the world? You know, so this hypocrisy is mind-boggling, how they can make an issue. Okay, you could kill anybody you want, but you can't kill them using the chemical weapons that we say you can't use that chemical. And then the other one, by the way, just to highlight the hypocrisy, they say the Syrian government ostensibly killed 300 people. How many did the Egyptian military kill last week? The numbers that I see are over 1,000. That's okay.
Gerald, there are reports, and it has been for quite some time, that the U.S. is covertly training the jihadist commandos to wage war against the Syrian government. And many of those commandos are al-Qaeda. And so we have U.S. intelligence agencies training these jihadist commandos, giving them weapons to take down an established government. Whether Assad is a good government or not is not the question. That is the established government in Syria. So we are training, I say we, the United States is training jihadist commandos and arming them to bring down another nation's government. And yet al-Qaeda is the group that our soldiers are supposed to be killing. This is insane.
Oh, of course it's insane. Here, let's start with this one. Every damn election, every year, every 4 years particularly, you get these Republican and Democrat candidates out there, and they keep talking about the founding fathers and the principles of this country. The founding fathers will be turning in their grave. Did anybody ever hear the phrase of no foreign entanglements? Who are we to be in these countries? That's number one. Number two, to go to your question about al-Qaeda, how about this one? Remember Mujahideen? Weren't they al-Qaeda in the early forms? Who started that one? Oh, I'll tell you who. Jimmy Carter. Oh, you know that nice guy, that peanut farmer down there, just a good Christian man. Yeah, you remember that one, don't you, Rick? To begin al-Qaeda, to throw the Russians out of Afghanistan, supporting Osama bin Laden and the crew back in the early days with those Stinger missiles and all our money. They created the Taliban. They created al-Qaeda. They created the Mujahideen. And they're creating it again.
The Jimmy Carter I remember was also CFR and Trilateral Commission.
You got it, the Bilderberg boy.
And so they just replace their puppets who get to sit in the big chair at the White House, whether it's Jimmy Carter or Bill Clinton or any of the Bushes or Barry Soetoro, whatever his name is. It really doesn't matter because those guys aren't really the ones who are making the decisions. They're simply implementing what a shadow government is telling them to do.
That's right. And look, it's not even a shadow government.
Not anymore. Not anymore.
No, I mean, it's so apparent. I mean, there are two branches. One is the money changers, and the other is the military-industrial complex that Dwight D. Eisenhower, five-star general, Supreme Commander of the Allied Forces and two-term Republican president, warned the people were taking over the country. Everybody could go listen to that tape of his, that it's on YouTube, of him warning as he left office that they'd rob us of the genius of our scientists, the sweat of our labors, and the future of our children. Here we are, robbed. Oh, and I love this, by the way.
And 3 years later, John F. Kennedy was dead.
That's right. Somebody just sent me a link of... I get so much stuff, and I just had a look at this one. And there was, of all people, Farrakhan. God, it had to be 10, 15 years ago, talking about JFK and how the money changes killed him because he was going to put silver as a backing and start dismantling the Federal Reserve, and coming from all places from Farrakhan. And so, yeah, they killed him. Oh, by the way, there's a quick story. I have the photograph, actually. In 1992, John Connally, you mentioned Kennedy, the former governor of Texas, and, of course, as a Democrat and then later a Republican Treasury Secretary under Nixon, he wanted to meet me. I had written my first book, Trend Tracking, and in that book I had forecast in 1988 there'd be a new third party, and for some reason I mentioned Ross Perot. So he wants to meet me. I go down to and met him in Dallas. And it was me, a fellow by the name of John J. Hooker from Tennessee, and Pat Caddell, former pollster from Jimmy Carter days, who was doing polling for Perot at the time. And again, I have the photograph of me, him, and his wife, Nellie, me, John Connally, and Nellie, at the book depository with the window over our shoulder. And it's their first time back, by the way, since the assassination. And he starts telling the story of what happened that day. And we're parked in a limousine out in front with the window is the side. And he said, we're driving around. He pointed back where they were coming around Daley Plaza. He said, I heard a gunshot, and I looked to my right. He said, I knew it was a gunshot because I've been hunting since I'm a little boy. He explained he was wearing a dark blue suit that day, showed how he was scrunched up in the jump seat. And remember those old jump seats in the car, and holding his Stetson hat on his knee. And he said, I looked over to my left, and there were brains on my shoulder. He said, I know there were brains because my daddy was a butcher. Now, remember, I'm hearing this story, this guy from the Bronx, right? I'm ending up standing this. Anyway, we're walking back into the Anatole Hotel, and he looks at me, he stops. And he said to me, I read your book, Trend Tracking. He says, fine piece of work. He said, I know your heart's in the right place. He said, but you don't have a clue what's going on. And neither do the American people. Because if they did, there'd be a revolution in this country. Now, this is 1992. Look how much we've digressed since then. Look how apparent it's become of the takeover of the money powers. And this is a guy, Connally, who again was the U.S. Treasury Secretary under he's the guy that told Nixon to pack up his bags and leave.
John Connally personally told you if the American people knew what was really going on, there'd be a revolution.
That's right.
It's interesting.
Matter of fact, I even wrote about it in one of the previous Trends journals.
Gerald, let's talk about the rumors of the missing gold out of the New York Federal Reserve vaults and possibly the COMEX melting down in the near future if enough people demand physical gold in return for their paper gold. What do you think the state of the real market is right now regarding physical gold?
I believe that there's not enough supply to meet demand. I'm in that camp. You look at the last quarter, Rick. Demand for physical gold in the Asian markets has increased 53%. I mentioned before about the decline of the emerging markets. In the rupee, the Indian rupee is hitting all-time lows. They're putting on constraints about getting the money out of the country. They're making it virtually impossible for Indians to buy gold. They're raising taxes on it, and it's almost impossible to buy gold coins and medallions being imported. Why? Because people know that their currency isn't worth the paper it's not printed on, and they want to get out of it and get into something real. And of course, the Indians have a long history of loving gold. But the same thing is happening in China. The reserves they diminished by 2% over the last week. The same thing's going on with the decline of the real in Brazil. Indonesia, same story. Demand for physical gold continues to increase. I began buying gold. My first buy of gold was 1977 or 78. It was $187.50 an ounce. I also bought it, by the way, at the highest day, the point in the trading day, when it fell apart in January of 1980. So I remember the crash really well when it fell out. The point being, it's a very different world now. When you go back to 1980, there was no demand for physical gold after the market collapsed. You know why? Because there was no Russia. It was the Soviet Union, and everything locked behind the Iron Curtain east of Berlin was controlled by the Soviets. So there was no world trade. China? Who knew anything about China? All we ever knew about was Mao Zedong, and he was probably dead by then. India? Nobody cared about India. People went there because they had a guru, or they heard of, that was about it. It was a different world. It wasn't a global gold market. And back then, silver markets were controlled by the Hunt brothers out of Texas. That's how thinly traded the markets were. This is a very different time. And that's why I'm still bullish on gold. And that's why I believe that there isn't enough gold. Look, you saw what happened when the Germans said they were going to repatriate their gold out of the banks of England and the United States. Oh, but we're going to take it. We don't need it until 2020. What, are they bringing it over by carrier pigeon? Come on. You can't take this stuff overnight? And I believe they can't take it because it's not there. Look, they won't. How come they won't show we the people where our gold is? In Fort Knox. Show us. It's our gold. We're the taxpayers. Look, you're a public servant. Show me it. That's what the people should be saying. You are a public servant. I want to see my gold. But the people in this country lost their courage.
Gerald, there's been a steady drumbeat for months that the Federal Reserve is going to taper its quantitative easing, and yet it never appears. Do you think that they are going to turn off the spigot of funny money, or are they in this to infinity?
It's hard to say because it's already having a deleterious effect. Look what's happened to interest rates. At some point, they're going to have to, because you can see the disturbances now going on in all of the emerging markets, as I said. Everybody knows why the emerging markets boomed. The emerging markets boomed because the Federal Reserve dumped all this cheap money into the marketplace. So you can borrow United States dollars really cheaply, and they brought it into other countries where the currencies were valued more. So you could buy more of that money with your currency. And now that trend has reversed, and all of these economies are declining. So, Rick, when you go back and you look at the problems that are happening in Turkey when there were those demonstrations, you know what Erdogan, the prime minister of Turkey, was saying? It's an interest rate war that's causing this destabilization because interest rates are going up. So now let's go back here in the States. Look at new home sales last week. What were they? They were down 13%. Why? Because it's been an interest rate recovery. 30-year mortgages have gone up over 100 basis points in just a few months.
I saw one mainstream news media article said it was a pause in the recovery that started in 2011.
A pause that refreshes.
Yes.
How nice.
The recovery that started in 2011.
You know, again, I just read to you before the headline from CNBC. Certainly not the communist news broadcast company, the 5% recovery, why most are still in recession. So even CNBC is admitting there's been no recovery. And then also, you look at the numbers that recently came out on durable goods. You know, they're down a whopping 7.3%. So there is no recovery. So to answer your question, when and if, I don't know. I don't know. My guess is this, just a guess. I don't think they're going to do it in September, and I'll tell you why. Look at the numbers coming out on retail sales lately. They're in the toilet, even from Walmart. I mean, even everybody, Macy's, or Saks, they're all down. As we all know, retailers have to make it in the wintertime with the holiday sales. If they stop the tapering and the markets panic, it's going to kill the retail business for November, December. And I don't think they're going to risk that. So I would say if they taper it all, it'll be in January, not in September. That's the best guess I could come up with.
And they've got to get Angela Merkel reelected in September. I think that there was a deal cut between Mr. Obama and Mrs. Merkel last year where Germany agreed not to press too hard on certain issues so that Mr. Obama would get through the election. And I think he promised her that he would make sure there was nothing that upset the Europeans before the German elections are held in September. But after September, after Germany gets through their elections, I think all bets are off at that point.
Yeah, and again, she's up against a lot of pressure because the people don't want to keep bailing out the Greeks and others, and now all this information's coming out with the ties between the United States and Germany with the NSA spying. And the German people are quite sensitive to that, being that they know what a Stasi feels like, and they see it happening again. So
they should. Mrs. Merkel, how many photographs have come out of her wearing her communist uniform when she was in her 20s?
I know. I was in Berlin. I was in Berlin and Munich this year, and I have to tell you, the German people have not gotten over the atrocity that they let happen by Hitler destroying their country. They still have not gotten over the wounds of that, because anybody that's gone to either of those places or other places, Frankfurt and a number of cities that were once grand cities, and you see the destruction that happened from World War II. It took thousands of years to make that country what it was, and in 5 years it was destroyed by a maniac. And we're seeing the same setup over here. Everything that this country has been built up for since the founding fathers is being destroyed now right in front of our eyes, and it seems like nobody's doing much about it. It's one psychopathic president after another. I want to read a quote to you. I just found, by the way, looking over some information in writing the next TrendsJournal. This is very funny. This is from a year ago. 2 years ago, the summer of 2011, Biden predicts economy will create up to 500,000 jobs a month soon. Quote, All in all, we're going to be creating somewhere between 100,000 and 200,000 jobs next month, I predict. Now, I love this because this is blowhard Biden at his best. I'm here to tell you sometime in the next couple of months, we're going to be creating between 250,000 jobs a month and 500,000 jobs a month.
Yeah, they're all DNSA.
This is in April of 2010. I mean, and they get away with it.
They do.
I'm here to tell you. You know, these guys, it's a mafia. It's the Republican and Democratic mafia. And you're right, by the way, about the NSA. That's all this is really about. It's oh yeah, they're watching us and they're going to keep us in line. But it's just another arm of the military-industrial complex. When you read the Financial Times numbers on this that came out recently, we the people are spending $80 billion a year to have private contractors watch us.
And this NSA revelation, which simply confirmed what many of us have always known for a long time was taking place, but Mr. Snowden gave us the hard evidence of how pervasive it is. It really smoked out the status in both parties. I mean, John McCain and Lindsey Graham, they held hands with Dianne Feinstein and Barack Obama. They're all defending the state in spying. There's no difference in the parties.
No, absolutely not. As I said, it's the Democrats and the Republicans, the Bananos, the Gambinos, the Lanskys, the Dutch Schultz. It's all the same. And the only thing difference is that they dress differently and they have a different manner of speaking. Here, again, Rick, go back to the spring issue of the TrendsJournal 2012. We had next train to Auschwitz, all aboard, kiss those calories goodbye. And we had Americans dressed up with their WWF shirts on and I Love Bieber getting into cattle cars with Made in USA on them. And inside we had the breakout point was Big Bro. And we had, without the public really noticing or caring enough to notice, Obama's 2012 had become Orwell's 1984. Big Brother had arrogated to himself full power to do as he pleased. So what? What was the big deal? Does anyone really care? Why should anybody have to know about the NDAA and the NDRP executive order? With bills to pay, mouths to feed, jobs to find or keep, family, health, and personal problems, Washington was a world away from everyday life, or so it seemed, or so it was made to seem. And we go on to say how they're watching everything that we're doing. And Anthony Frieda, our illustrator, did a beautiful piece on, we call it Homeland Insecurity Advisory System, with the red, orange, yellow, blue, and green alerts. And we went on to say, in chapter and verse, giving all the facts about here. In 2012, there were sporadic cries for freedom, but they were mostly muted. The media barely covered Washington's assault on constitutional rights, and when they did, it was in sterile, dispassionate, non-committal, no-big-deal tone, and devoid of any discussion about how these assaults would impact everybody on every level. And we go on to say, bigger than Big Brother, far more comprehensive and insidious than the most repressive police states of the 20th century. Since 9/11, Big Bro USA has been secretly compelling vast databases of private information on you. Telephone conversations, personal emails, visits to websites, Google searches, text messages, credit card transactions, mobile phones, GPS locations, travel itineraries, Facebook activity, medical records, traffic tickets, surveillance, camera footage, and online purchases. We wrote about this a year before Snowden came out with it. And I'm only reading to you a tiny passage of a 44-page magazine.
Gerald, in the early days of this radio program, and we started in '99, we had a magazine also, and I had to give it up because it was too much work. It was only my daughter and myself to put it together, and I know how much work goes into a magazine. So I salute you, producing the TrendsJournal, and but anyhow, the August 2001 issue of our magazine, when we were still publishing it, the entire issue was devoted to the coming police state, surveillance technology, the entire magazine. It was August 2001. And interestingly, the front cover, the design that we used for the front cover was a photo of the World Trade Center, the Twin Towers, and the all-seeing eye above the Twin Towers. 30 days later, the Twin Towers are gone.
Wow. And
the all-seeing eye appeared. That's pretty spooky, because it was very insightful. I mean, we weren't even aware when we produced that magazine of why we chose that front cover. But we've watched this develop now over 12 years, and we've been in a state of perpetual war for 12 years, and war is becoming normal to the American people. We're in war all the time, and nobody seems to think that this is abnormal. I want to remind our listeners about Trends, the Trends Journal, brand new format, all new look. Looks fantastic, Gerald. How can people subscribe to the all-new Trends Journal?
Oh, very simply, TrendsJournal.com, TrendsJournal.com. And, Rick, we know that people are having a very difficult time out there. I mean, we all know the numbers coming in. 97% of the jobs that have been created this year, 97% are part-time jobs. People are not making a living wage. So we have a discount request page there because we want to make the Trends Journal available to everyone. So, it's very easy, no personal information. Just go to, if you can't afford the full price, which is only $99 a year, and that includes the Trends Journals plus Monday through Friday Trends in the News broadcast by me. And they could just sign up for it, and we want to prepare them so they could survive and prevail these coming times. And I have to say, it's that when you see the new Trends Journal, you'll say to yourself, this is beyond what Life magazine was and way ahead of time.
Is the new format, is it going to be electronic only, or is it still going to be print and electronic?
Oh, no, it's going to be print, and by the way, we're encouraging everybody actually to get the print edition because, this is going to be a valuable piece of history because we're writing history as it is happening and before it's happening, and you're going to want these as reference works. So when you see it's a full-color magazine with no advertising in it, and it's 54 pages of no advertising magazine. So
you mean Goldman Sachs isn't sponsoring it, or Bank of America, or the Democratic National Committee, or no one like that? No, nobody like that. Were your friends at MF Global?
Oh, they gave us that's where we got all our money from. We did dirty deals with MF Global. And again, and you look what happens when you mention MF Global. I just read where they just broke a little girl out in South Dakota, 4-year-old girl planting a little garden in her backyard in public housing because she wasn't allowed to grow vegetables or plant in a public housing lot, and the USDA clamped down on her. And in the meantime, there has not been not one conviction of any of the Wall Street mob. Not a one head has rolled.
I doubt if John Corzine was even questioned one time by anybody of authority. The guy's walking free.
Yep.
He got away with his crime because, the fascist takeover is complete. Criminals don't fear going to jail if they own the judges and the police.
Of course.
And that's what's happened. Well, the magazine is Trends Journal, and you can sign up for it at TrendsResearch.com. The publisher, Gerald Celente. Gerald, thank you so much. Thank you for being on Trunews.
It's great being on with you. Thanks for having me, Rick.
Reporting the countdown to the second coming of Jesus Christ. This is True News.
God doesn't condemn Christians, so why do it to yourself? Learn the consequences of self-condemnation in today's Moment with Charles Stanley.
The long-term effect is, I think, a very poor self-image, number one. which really affects every aspect of our life, all of our relationships, whether we succeed in life or not. When you live under that bondage of self-condemnation, you separate yourself from people. It's hard to develop genuine, intimate relationships. It's difficult